I'm going to start with a very brief introduction to science communication because we're all here at the science communication workshop. And before we start talking about SciComm, I wanted to point out 3 very important rules of science communication. Could you tell me what those rules could be? Any ideas? Rules of science communication. Any thoughts? So okay, I'll share the ones that I think are very important. So the most important rule is that communication is not about you. It's about them. It's about your audience. And that is the reason why today I am standing here, because for me, you matter the most. And I have to make sure that I am able to deliver my message, my colleagues are able to deliver their messages. So we are not important, you are. So when you are working on your communication message, when you're working on your talks, you're working on your manuscripts, on your grants, you have to take into account your audience, the person who will be reading your work or the person who will be sitting in the audience. So with that, I also think that to be successful in any career, be it this, be it business, be it arts, you have to be a good communicator. So irrespective of whether you will pursue science after this, whether you will move into another field, it is important that you're able to communicate effectively with your peers, with your colleagues, and with your seniors and everybody. So this is a soft skill that is applicable to all fields. And most importantly, that when scientists learn to communicate effectively, science thrives. I think that's quite logical, right? That if you're able to disseminate your research to your field will thrive. If you're able to disseminate research, which was very encouraging to see in the morning, to see that video and how scientists here are engaging with local communities, you know that the whole idea of doing science is to improve human lives, is to improve society. So when scientists communicate effectively, science will thrive. So can somebody tell me, maybe we can now do a little role play because everybody's been sitting since morning. Can I have 2 brave volunteers who can speak loudly? And I think just talk about each other's. What are you both working on?
I'm working on the effect of rice beer, which is consumed in Assam.
And I'm working on I'm actually monitoring about the physical and chemical, the parameters of water cycle. And I'm also planning to work
Okay, so now if you want to tell her why are you working on that, what would you say? I mean, why is your work important?
He's clever, he's very clever. I was actually asking him to say that.
Because I'm an environmentalist lover. So I wanted to study why there are a lot of writings in the papers, newspapers, and there are articles like it has been, it has been damaged, it has been polluted. So that's why I got this study.
I like this, huh?
So actually it was a review process. I was going through many papers, and since I don't belong to Assam, I was not knowing about the traditions and cultures of Assam. And suddenly I came to know about this rice beer thing, and I got interested in rice beer and all these things. That's it.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for being so brave, coming forward. Thank you. So they've basically illustrated a difference between communication and conversation. So could you tell me the difference between the two? What is a conversation? Conversations is just...
Conversation is also kind of communication between 2 people.
Right.
But communication...
It's a kind of explanation maybe.
Communication may not be a conversation also. A communication may be a silent one also, with just sign language or visuals.
Yeah.
But conversation has to be with words where you want to...
Okay, great. Thank you so much for helping us get into this topic. So the reason why I know it's very, you might find this very trivial, is like, why is she talking about conversation and but because there is a difference between communication and conversation. So communication, so when he started telling, when they both started telling each other about what they're working on, I really didn't understand, but why is she working on that? But the first question that will come to my mind would be like, but why are you working on that? And that why, so what, is the basis of communication, is the message, right? So in communication, transformation of thoughts and words into action is important. That's what makes it a communication. Conversation is merely just an exchange of words. Communication focuses more on what you wish to accomplish. So if you wish to, for example, you're writing a grant application, you have to mention clearly what you're trying to accomplish. That's going to be the message that you want to deliver. Whereas conversation merely involves what you wish to share with the other person. You don't want the other person to take an action on what you're saying. She said, I'm an environmental lover, right? So she could have actually said, the reason why I'm working on this is because it will save the environment. How so? I will tell you how it will save the environment. So that's the difference between when an activist is on the stage and telling you about what they're working on and how you could be part of their movement. That's a communication. If two people are just merely talking about their research, that's a conversation. So you're really not expecting the other person to take an action on what you're saying. And of course, communication is key to bringing about a change, whereas conversation is necessary for of living within a community. And you will understand why I'm harping so much on a well thought out communication, because that's what most of us as scientists are never prepared for. If we meet somebody on the road and they ask us what we're doing, most of the times we fumble and we don't know. We are working on this TGF beta pathway in the cells. You won't understand, forget it. So it is important for us as scientists to communicate and forget about the papers and the grants and all of that. Those are tangible outcomes of communication. How do you think it helps you otherwise? How do you think communicating well helps a scientist? I mean, the fact that you're all here today, I'm sure there are reasons why you're here today, what you're hoping to achieve. Could you just tell me few reasons why for a scientist it is important to communicate? So of course it's very important for developing skills, so be it written, verbal, oral skills. In career enhancement, so you enhance your career by writing grants, manuscripts, giving talks and all of that. Enhancing research quality and its impact by collaborating, by engaging with communities. You're really improving the quality and the impact of your science. You get new research perspectives also in the meanwhile. When you're at a conference and you're talking to somebody, that person might give you a completely new direction to your add a completely new direction to your work. So and similarly, if you are out on the field talking to the local communities about their problems, that might also feed into your research and might inform your research. So you can also get new research perspectives. Of course, higher personal and institutional profile. It helps you form new collaborations. We are living in a world where we're constantly, there's so many technologies coming up, there are so many different fields coming up, and there is a need for all of us to kind of come together, collaborate, and solve the questions that we face. So it also helps if you are a clear communicator, you have clear expectations from what you want from your collaborator, and also, I hope that when you go out and you communicate and when you're writing nice papers that are getting good reviews, you also enjoy the process and also reap benefits from that. Additional funding is obviously important to increase awareness and increase student recruitment, because when you retire as scientists, you want to make sure that you're leaving behind an inspired generation that would like to take up science once you leave. So it's very important that you constantly encourage and inspire your younger colleagues and students. So these are some of the different ways in which you can communicate. I think we all know written communication, oral, visual. So in written, you have emailing your supervisors, collaborators, potential employers. It could be writing up a nice CV, a scientific report, a book chapter, and oral communication could be a talk like this. It could also be an interview, a lecture or a workshop, and visual communication could be making a movie or a PowerPoint presentation. So these are some of the things that we will also cover today. We'll be covering some of these aspects through different sessions today. So what do you think are some characteristics of good communication? Just throw some words at me. What do you think what do you consider as some good characteristics of good communication? Clearly, so clarity of the message. Anything else? I think we all know, so that's why I don't want to take you through that. I think we all know what makes a good communication. So let's remind ourselves about what makes a good communication. What do you see when sometimes you see a speaker, you think that, I like this thing about him or her. So, close engagement with the audience, right? That's to clarity and engagement with the audience. What else? Very good point. The monotony in your voice can really put a lot of people to sleep. So make sure that you're, changing your voice. Anything else? Sorry? That's a really, really good point. You should have a good body language, a smile on your face. You should involve the whole idea of giving a talk is you're not giving it to yourself. You're giving it to somebody else. Similarly, when you're writing a manuscript, you're not writing it for yourself, you're writing it for the field, for people to understand what you're doing, how you have contributed to the field. So again, bearing in mind that communication is for the other person, right? Thank you. So what else? What about the content? What are you looking for? Concise, to the point, clear, contextual. That's a very good point. What else? Easy to understand. So if there are non-specialists in the audience, they shouldn't regret the fact that they came for your talk. So you need to make sure so again, you need to know your audience. So, if your audience is all specialists in your field, you don't have to, give a long background or anything. But for example, a grant goes to so many different reviewers. Some of them are not from your field directly. So it's important that you make the science understandable. So that's a very good point. Anything else? Nothing else? Okay, so completeness, so it's important that you include all the information. So when you're delivering a talk, make sure that the audience has come with some expectations to hear some of the key messages. And when you're delivering a message, when you're showing that, I found out, A gives rise to B, make sure you support that with some evidence. So that's very, very, very important. It needs to be concise. So like we said, short, keep it to the point, and it has to be clear and very specific. Consider and value the need, point of view, and mood of the recipient. So, make sure you don't be very respectful, you stay calm. Communication supported by facts and figures, good language and grammar. I think we'll probably talk about that a little more in the manuscript writing and presentation skills sessions. And be very respectful to your audience. Right. So again, as you can see, Ranjana and I are big fans of PhD comics. You'll see a lot of this today. So this is actually, they're actually so real that actually I say that they're tragically funny. The comics are very real and they're tragically funny. And this again is another tragedy where when you're a grad student, somebody asks you, like, what are you doing? You say, I'm doing a PhD. It's like, okay, good. You move off. But as you go ahead in your academic career and people ask you, like, so what do you do in the lab? Or what do you do in your institute? You really fail to explain. You really fail to explain what you're doing because you're not prepared. You're so engrossed in your lab, in the experiments that you're doing, that you really are unable to communicate what you're working on. So, and I think that's why this workshop, the purpose of this workshop is also to kind of help you pause for a bit and come out of the labs, think about the essential skills you need to become a good scientist or to become a good person for that matter. So it's important that when we are working on our science, at the same time we also understand what impact it will make. I'm sure all of us, when we're doing PhDs, we're working on smaller questions that will add to the big picture, but we need to know the big picture. We can't just be focused on those small questions, but those small questions are important. So this actually brings me to a topic that is very close to my heart, which is public communication of science, communicating science to the public. And here are some newspaper headlines that we constantly see that, this banana has cured HIV and cancer has been cured forever, and these completely misleading headlines. And most of us are working in cancer or in this field or that field. We just look at the newspaper and we're like, yeah, this is not true. The journalist doesn't know what they're talking about. This is a rubbish newspaper. But no, but this is actually forming opinions of people outside. They think that cancer has been cured and you guys are not giving me the medicine. So this is very important. So engaging and communicating actively with the public, with the media, with the mass media is very important for us. If we want, and if you're in the field, you're responsible for the kind of reporting that happens of your field. You can't hold your hands up and say, no, sorry, I'm not responsible for this work that's been reported, therefore I'm not going to report that this is false. So we should not do that. I know in an ideal setting we are all very busy with our lives, and this probably is very low on our priority list, but I think as scientists collectively it is our responsibility. Right, so this is again a strip from PhD Comics. Surprise, surprise. Another very funny but very true story behind how the science moves from the lab to the public space. So here, for those of you who can't read, it starts here. So this is the scientist. So you've found out that A is correlated with B with a P of 0.56 given C, assuming D and under E conditions, right? That's how most of our results are, right? But this gets translated by the university PR office, so those who have PR offices. Most of the institutes in our country don't have PR offices, but it gets translated by the reporter, by the journalist, or the PR office as, for immediate release, scientists find potential link between A and B, and in brackets, under certain conditions. So that bracket gets moved away completely when it's picked up by newswires. It gets picked up by newswire which says A causes B, say scientists. Then obviously we're living in an age of internet, so it's picked up and it's spread in no time, and people on various social media and news, and now I'm sure you know that a lot of news channel websites pick up from one place and they actually use the same news on different websites. So it gets picked up by the internet, and what really ends up happening is that your grandmother is wearing this to ward off A. So, and this is very true. I don't think so. In my own life, I think I've seen many instances where people have said that, I'm doing this because science says this. I'm like, no, science has not said that. So I think what we are really trying to convey through this, or the people who've made this are trying to convey, is that there is a huge responsibility lying with us, which is not just doing research, but also making sure how it's disseminated, interpreted outside our labs and institutions. So this is really what I wanted to talk about there. So this is another case story that I wanted to just talk about here, because it highlights another aspect of public communication of science, and how we sometimes assume that the public knows nothing, and that we are the only ones who know everything. So there is this company called Theranos in the US. It was actually started by a prodigy called Elizabeth Holmes. She was being touted as the next Steve Jobs of Silicon Valley, and she was running this diagnostic company that said that could use just a drop of blood to run multiple diagnostic tests, which is obviously path-breaking if you think about it. Like right now, we give like milliliters of blood to get a few tests. She was saying her technology could just use a drop of blood to diagnose many diseases. But when she was asked about what is your technology about, how does it work? I mean, tell us something about your technology. She would always be very, very secretive. So here is actually, so once her interview came in New York Times, in New Yorker, where when the reporter asked her about her technology, this is what she said. A chemistry is performed so that a chemical reaction occurs and generates a signal from the chemical interaction with the sample, which is translated into a result which is then reviewed by certified laboratory personnel. So this was picked up by a very, very enthusiastic and suspicious journalist who, from the very beginning, was very suspicious about Elizabeth Holmes' company and what she was up to. In her company, apparently, even the colleagues were not supposed to share results and talk to each other. So this was picked up by that journalist, which led to a slew of investigations and all of that, which led to the shutdown of her company. So her company doesn't exist. She has a lot of cases pending against her. So this is again an example I'm trying to give here, that we shouldn't hide science with the public. I mean, you're also assuming they are dumb. They're not dumb. You know, a lot of the science journalists also might not have PhDs and all of that, but they're scientifically quite literate. So we should be very, very ethical when we are communicating and disseminating our science as well. If you are unable to share your science for some reason, you should give them a reason. You should say it's we have an embargo right now, or right now I'm waiting for a patent. You know, there are always reasons why you would not share, but to not share your finding because you are actually falsifying, fabricating data, that will get a lot of people suspicious. So I just wanted to share this case story. So why communicate science? I think this is a question that I'm sure a lot of scientists who are busy with their experiments are like, why should we bother? Why should we bother communicating science to the public? I have my reasons, but I want to hear from you. Why do you think we should communicate to the public? Anyone? I think I've covered a few points already in my introduction and in my talk till here, but I just want to hear from you. Do you think public communication of science is important? Yeah, to get some new research perspective, right? Anything else? To remove doubts, burst myths, science myths. Anything else? Very important point. Most of the research, in fact, majority of the research in India is funded by public money. And we need to also get public support for science. As soon as there is a budget cut, the first budget is cut for science.
Because people just don't understand. Also, politicians, policymakers don't understand. We don't engage with them enough to make them understand the value of science that we are doing. Also, science is a very long, coming to a very translational, coming to a point where, science is really helping the society. It takes a long time, you don't have, it's not an overnight exercise, it's not an overnight process. So we also need to make people who are not in science understand that it is a long process, it takes time. And for that reason also we need to engage with the public more to make them understand how the scientific process works. So yes, I think we are accountable to the public because the taxpayers' money funds our research. Most of the PhDs are funded by taxpayers' money, so we are accountable and answerable to them. Anything else? Any other reason?
Foster collaborations.
To foster collaborations with the community groups, perhaps, like how you do in your institute. Anything else? Any other reason? I mentioned one already, to be aware of how your field is being covered in the media. It is important for you to see how your field is being covered in the media, and for developing government science policies. I mean, we cannot really complain if the science policies are not benefiting us because we're not part of the process that develops them. So it's important that we engage more with the government, we engage more with policymakers. New perspective on research, I think like one of you said, inspire the next generation of researchers. Again, very important because we have to remember that once we are gone, we have to make sure somebody is going to carry forward our legacy. Somebody is going to carry forward the republic of science that Ranjana talked about. So that is also one of the reasons why it is important. To increase awareness of the value of research to the society. Again, I can't, because now I am out in the public domain a lot more than I used to be when I was a lab scientist. I understand, most of the time people are wondering where the scientists are. When I ask them like, why do you not know about this? This is a current research. They said, we don't know how to access science. We don't know who to talk to. We don't need scientists that often. So it is something that I feel that we are to be blamed if we are not getting funding to do research, because we are not really making the society aware of the value of what we're doing in our labs. And this is something that he's already mentioned, that as a researcher funded by the government, you are accountable to the taxpayer, period. So we have to tell the public how and what the money is being used for. So these are three, I'm just going to quickly go over this. These are three models of public communication of science. So the deficit model assumes that the skepticism about science is caused by public's lack of relevant knowledge. The contextual dialogue model talks about, it's more conversational. So like you said, it's a lot of the science issues can be local, and therefore you have to, when you're talking to the communities, you need to have the right context. Then the participation engagement model is when you actually make the public part of your research. They're equal partners with you. So these are three models of public communication of science. Right, so could you tell me so this is one style of communication and this is another style of communication. Could you tell me which one is the scientific style? Blue one or the green one? So the blue one has background, then supporting details, and then conclusions. The green one has bottom line, so what, supporting details. Pretty obvious. So the blue one is the scientist. The green one is the public. So this is how the public would like to receive the information from you. They don't want to. So by the time you tell them about, the TGF-beta signaling does this and it does that, and the junk pathways like this, they've lost you. You've lost them. So it's important that you understand how to deliver your message also to the public. So it's not, you cannot use the same rule you're using for a manuscript to communicate to the public. So even when you're writing a popular science story in a newspaper or in a magazine, you have to start off by engaging the reader. Why should they be reading your story? So the bottom line is important. Like what was your finding? What are you talking about? That should really jar them. And why is it important? What's the broader context of your story? And then you give them evidence. Most of you have to give evidence. I mean, science doesn't work without evidence. So this is how one needs to really. And most importantly, you shouldn't dumb down your science. You should use appropriate metaphors, analogies to talk about science, and use the right language and style to talk about science. So and it's important that you engage them and you really excite them in the beginning, but it's also very important to meet their expectations. So you arouse them and make sure that you fulfill their excitement. Right, so I'm going to now talk quickly about these two pitches, and I would need volunteers again. So hopefully some of you are ready to come again in the stage. So has anyone heard of elevator pitch? Has any of you heard of what is an elevator pitch?
Maybe loud tone.
Loud tone?
Maybe.
Okay. Yes.
Elevator pitch is like, suppose a company has an executive member who is not accessible all the time, but the employee who is in the lower level has to access him for getting a promotion or something like that. So one day happens, it's like both of them are in the elevator and he gets 2 minutes until they reach their floor.
That's
so
right.
he has to pitch himself.
Right. And I think sometimes it's not even 2 minutes. Thank you so much. That's great. So for those of you who couldn't hear, an elevator pitch is really, it's a corporate terminology. So it's used a lot in the corporate world. And it illustrates a situation where you are stuck with the CEO or some top person from your company or another company in a lift, and you just have 20 seconds from first floor to 11th floor to really impress that person and tell them an idea that you have. So you need to be ready for that, and most of us are never ready for that moment when it comes in front of us. So we don't really use that much in science, and I do think it has a lot of relevance also in science. And for example, if you're at a conference and you really want to go and talk to a very senior scientist that you probably want to work with after you finish your PhD, or you want to go for a next postdoc there, and you meet that person suddenly at the conference, you've just that one chance to impress him or her about what you want to do and how you think your research will add to his or her lab. So, and most of the times we're never prepared for that, and I don't think so. That's a problem. What we can do is we can prepare ourselves today. We can definitely be more prepared about how we talk about our science, and it also helps us understand why is our research important. You know, what question is my research really going to answer? So this exercise also helps us in looking at the big picture and fitting our results, fitting our research in that big picture. So again, the fumbled elevator pitch is what would generally happen if you're not prepared for the situation. Dining table pitch is something that I have devised. It's not really a term as such, but it's what happens when somebody asks you, like your uncle or aunt or another concerned family member, what beta, what do you do? Like what are you really doing in life? And you either think that they won't understand me, so I'll just say that I'm doing something very important you won't understand. Or you fumble so much that okay, fine, I'm sure you're doing something well. I'm juk types. So, but I think it's important that we are excited about our research, and we get the other person excited about what we do also. And most of the times we're also not ready for dining table pitches. Sometimes you might even find a funder, a very rich businessman who wants to fund. I know this scenario is very unlikely in India. You don't really have a lot of rich businessmen who want to give money to research, but I mean, the landscape is changing. Things are changing in the country, so you never know. You might encounter someone in a flight who might get interested in your research and say, I would like to come to your institute and actually talk to you and see if I can fund some of the research in your institute. So, but we're never really, we're never ready for those moments, and I think that is why I am kind of, I've going to talk about these two pitches, and hopefully we'll have two people come forward to give these pitches to us, so that we can actually break down what the pitch should be like. Any brave soul? You've been sitting for far too long. I think you should get up. Yeah? Anyone who wants to just tell us about what they're working on? You can just stand up there and tell us. We're not looking for perfect pitches and, perfect talks. So just get up and just tell me. I want to know. So I'm sorry you're sitting right in front of me, so I'm going to ask you, the one in magenta and the...
Actually, we work on traditional knowledge-based drug discovery. It's like what we do is...
Can you throw your voice a little?
Okay, fine. What we do is, like we gather knowledge from the tribal people. Like Northeast is a place where there are a lot of tribes. They're using a lot of folklore, like medicines, medicinal herbs and plants. So we collect them and we make a scientific validation of that to come up with a drug. That's it.
Okay, so can you now structure it? So when you gave me, so that was the background you gave, right? Then what? And then you gave me the methodology. And then where is your conclusion?
Yeah, so like we start the background, then we make a scientific validation of that. Like all these experiments and data analysis, everything we do. Then we come up with a formulation, because people are having it raw. We come up with a formulation that goes directly to the society.
Okay, so that is what. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Ankita.
Ankita. Thank you, Ankita. So when you're thinking of an elevator pitch or a dining table pitch, think of how you'll deliver it. So you have to get the attention of that person. So if you think that person is interested in traditional knowledge systems, then you start off with it. I am working on da 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 da, and I'm using these methods to find out, or to deliver this intervention, back to the society, whatever. So you need to understand the audience, but be ready with those structures in your head. That this is going to be my quick quick pitch, the background pitch. Then this is going to be my ending. This is how I'm going to say this. My work will help us understand this. When you're giving a dining table pitch, can anyone give a dining table pitch? Thank you, Randita. So you have to start off with so what. So your skin diseases came really right at the end. So if your auntie is actually suffering from some skin disease, she'll be more interested in what you have to say once you say, I'm working on skin diseases. And how I'm doing that comes next, because then she'll be like, oh, how are you doing that? How are you actually studying skin diseases, or how are you going to cure the skin diseases? So make sure the structuring is appropriate. The so what needs to come before the background when you're talking to a lay person. Right, so some points to bear in mind when you're communicating to a lay audience. Avoid using jargon. So there is an exercise actually in the handout that I've given you. It's right after the ethics case studies. In that exercise, we've asked you to write down about your research that will be understandable to a third grader. Are you up for that challenge? Can you explain your research to a third grader? Yeah? Great. So I think we will really, we don't have time right now. There's tea waiting for all of you outside. So, but this is an exercise I will request you all to please attempt. And if you're using jargons like signaling, pathways, and all of that, underline it. Once you've written down the whole write-up, underline the technical terms and try to replace them. And if you have to use a different kind of language and style, try using analogies and visuals. Okay, forget about visuals because we're talking about a write-up here. So use analogies like DNA is like a spiral staircase. Help them visualize your science. So, and blood vessels are like highways. Gene regulation works like a brake and an accelerator in a car. So use those kind of analogies and metaphors to explain your research. So you're not really dumbing it down. You're just thinking and visualizing it, and actually it helps you also. It also helps you as a scientist to visualize your own work. So, and it helps you also. Then again, respect your audience's prior knowledge. Be mindful of not talking down at your audience. Focus on making the story relevant and meaningful to your audience. And the reason why I'm really calling science communication or your manuscript, grant, presentation skill, presentation a story is because story is merely a vehicle to deliver a message, right? It's a vehicle that helps you deliver a scientific message that you're trying to give. So it's important that you become a storyteller. It's important that you have a very interesting beginning that helps the reader or the person sitting in the audience want to know more about your research. And when you end it, it really leaves them with lot of fascinating information and questions that they would want to perhaps explore or ask you. So it needs to be communicated. Your science needs to be communicated like a story. And like I said many times, you have to address the question, so what, early on to keep the audience engaged. There's few things here that I thought I would share with you because many of you are PhD scholars. There is this competition run by Science called Dance Your PhD, and it's really, you have to dance your PhD. It's very, you should check out the videos on YouTube and on Science website. They're very, very creative, and it's a very, very innovative way of communicating your science. Vizies is other competition. It's a visualization competition. Flame Challenge is a challenge I just gave you. Explain your science to an 11-year-old. Explain your science to a third, fourth grader. This is a competition we supported last year. It's called the Fame Lab. Did anyone hear about the Fame Lab? Yes. Yes, you did. Anybody participated? Like sent their entries? No? Okay. So this was something that we supported last year. British Council and Cheltenham Science Festival UK brought this competition for the first time into India. And the competition, in a nutshell, was talk about your research, and it could be your PhD thesis in 3 minutes. And it had various regional competitions. There were workshops to train the participants in how they can become better communicators. And there was a finale in IASST Pune, and the winner of the finals actually will be taking part in the Cheltenham Science Festival in the international competition. So we will be hopefully launching this again this year. So keep your you keep your eyes open and look for this announcement. This was another attempt by us. We organized this very interesting and unique workshop for scientists called Visualizing Science. We organized this at the National Institute of Immunology in New Delhi, and where we brought together various visual artists from around the country. So ranging from a photographer, a documentary filmmaker, a virtual reality specialist, infographer, illustrator, and they all basically over 2 days talked to the scientists about ways in which they can present their results, how they can educate students about science, and really how do you use visual techniques to do that. So it was a very, very interesting. You can find out about this event on our website, and we will hopefully be organizing many more of these later. As Ranjan also mentioned in the beginning, we are very committed to engaging with the public about science. I think that's it's an important part of what we do. So we've organized various events. We've supported various events over the last few years. Again, you can find out more about this on our website. I will now just leave you with some useful resources that you can use. Like I said, that these workshops are only going to help you pick up some tips and resources on how you can improve yourself. These workshops cannot overnight turn you into good communicators, so you have to on your own end make efforts, and that's why I would request you all to check out Nature Education, Citable by Nature Education. It has fantastic resources on science communication, and also these resources are tailored for people whose native language is not English, which is most of us here. So and it's actually some of the modules are by Jean-Louis Domont. He's definitely one of the best trainers of science communication perhaps in the world. He's got very good YouTube videos also. So I would again request you all to check out his YouTube videos. He's got some really good tips on improving science communication. I'm sure you all know about TED Talks. IASST has a lot of good resources. Also, there's a very good book by Randy Olson, who's a scientist turned filmmaker. Don't be such a scientist talking substance in an age of science. So if you have time, free time, try to find this book and also go through this. And finally, to effectively communicate, we must realize that we're all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. So communication is something that you need irrespective of whether you're in science or not. So I would urge you to just train yourself to become better communicator irrespective of if you take up an academic career. So with that, I will end.